And so one of the biggest misinformations, for example, is that pharma pays doctors. And that's, I had mentioned that before. Pharma does not pay doctors. Good doctors do not get paid by pharma, period.
All right, everybody. This is a very special podcast for me today because we are introducing a very, very special person of our team, somebody that I'm so proud of. I'm so proud of to work with her, to work for her, to just, she's our colleague and she is a diamond. She is a gem, is Dr. Garcia. And we are going to get to know Dr. Garcia on a very personal level. We're also going to get to know Dr. Garcia on a medical level. But I want you guys to hear her story, know her story. And she is so inspirational. And I hope you guys get as much inspiration from her as I do. And I am lucky to work with her. Dr. Garcia, introduce yourself.
Hi. Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Judith Garcia. I'm a family medicine physician. I've been practicing medicine for a little bit over 17 years formally, but almost 20. I was just telling Nancy, almost 20 years since I graduated from medical school. So, yeah, it's been a journey. But yeah, I've been practicing mainly here in Watsonville and Santa Cruz area. And I'm very happy to be part of Olivia's heritage and to be here today.
So. Yeah. And Dr. Garcia is not only a gem, I call her a unicorn. And we're going to explain why and how much she is needed in our community and how her expertise by being bilingual are so important. And she says it better than anybody. But tell us, how special are you really? Because she doesn't give herself enough kudos. So I'm going to give her the kudos because she's very, very down to earth. And but even just listening to her stats, and I've heard them before, but every time I hear them, they're sad, impressive, all at the same time. I'm sad that there's not more of us in her profession, and I'm very honored with her because she is that. Yeah. Tell us, doctor.
So in the U.S., only about 6% of all the physicians are of Latino heritage. And of those 6%, only 2% are Latinas or female. And so, and obviously we mostly concentrate in the cities where there are more Latinos. But in this region, I am actually one of the very, very few doctors of Latin heritage. And although you may see the last name, most of them are either Filipino or married to a Hispanic doctor. So not a lot of Latina doctors like myself. So I agree. I think I am a very much of a diamond in the rough kind of thing.
No, she is a diamond. No rough here. There is no rough. She is a unicorn, meaning not unique. Not very many of us. Yeah. And it's and just, we're going to get into how you became a doctor, the struggle you went to the doctor culturally. And we forgot to tell the story in Spanish on how when your dad said either dead or married, you leave the house. And just how you went against all norms, all traditions. You got educated. You even married late, right? Yeah. And had children while in medical school. So just your whole journey is such an admirable journey. And I'm going to allow you to speak about it because I get excited, but nobody says it better than her.
Well, and in the terms of being a bilingual physician, a true bilingual physician, because again, even though our numbers are low, not every Latino doctor knows how to speak Spanish. And that is also concerning because many of them are third, fourth generation Latinos. And although I respect them as my colleagues, unfortunately, they also fall into the not having good Spanish background or being able to culturally connect with the Latino community.
They're no Sabo kids.
They are no Sabo kids, yeah. I know too many of them, unfortunately. But but it's good to have the background that I think I've acquired, both in my training, but also just coming up and culturally. So I was brought here at 5 years of age. My dad was a bracero. For those of you who don't know what a bracero is, it was a contracted individual who was brought to work in the field during the late eras of the World War or post-World War II. And they worked contracted by the government and by California and some of the other southwestern states. Anyhow, he worked here for many, many years until he migrated us. And not that I came the good way, just because he worked his ass off to be here, and he deserved to migrate his family.
That's right.
And so... but I came at about age of 5. I did my elementary school here, and at about age 11, he had already retired. He was in his late 60s, and he wanted to go back to Mexico to work. So we went back, and I did my junior high and my high school in Mexico. I was born in Guadalajara, Jalisco. I grew up in a city called Tepatitlan, Jalisco, which is east of Guadalajara City. And I loved living there. I wanted to go to medical school over there. When I was in high school, I got exposed to medicine for the first time. I got to see firsthand what my impact as a human can be to other people's lives. And that to me was eye-opening. I was able to save little children's life by just educating the parents on how to give them rehydration and prevention. And to me, that was a key point in my wanting to be a doctor. I just had never seen anybody like me in medicine. Not even then, right? Not even there. I had a cousin, an older cousin who was a dentist, and she had gone to Guadalajara, so I knew that was potential. And one, as a matter of fact, the ER doctor there told me, "Hey, if you want to be a doctor, you can be anything you want." Which, for the first time, anybody had ever told me that I can choose my career, I can choose my path, and I can choose my livelihood, which was astounding. I never thought that I had a choice because, as Nancy kind of mentioned, my dad, his idea of us women was you get married or you live in the house until
forever.
You die. Yeah, he did not have any concept of me leaving the house before marriage. But
quick question. Mm-hmm. As of education in your family, are you one of the first women to get educated?
I'm the only woman in my family to get educated. My brother, wow, who's 10 years older than me, he did go to college. But when we went back to Mexico, he stayed behind. And it was because he stayed behind and finished high school here, he was got a scholarship for soccer to go to Northridge, Cal State Northridge, and he graduated as a mechanical engineer, aeronautic engineer.
My brother is a civil engineer at Cal State LA from a scholar.
Yeah. So I was very proud of my brother. I saw in him what I wanted for me, but not necessarily in engineering. And when we came back to the U.S., when I was about 18 years old, just about, I did a
semester, you said, in high school.
Just a semester in high school.
Imagine
and then
that,
I started working at a nursing home. And
wait. Imagine that. You come back from Mexico as a senior, last year of high school. We're not going to get into that because we don't want to relive some traumas, but wow, okay, yeah. Let's do
well,
this.
And then in all fairness too, I came with ideas of wanting to be a doctor, and basically they said, "What? No, you're not going to be anything." And by the matter of fact, you're too late to apply to any college or university. I wanted to go to UCLA, right. And so they're like, "Yeah, no."
Last semester,
yeah,
so,
I was too late to apply for anything. So they basically shot my dreams down, and at that point, I really truly believed it. So I ended up attending community college. I went to El Camino College in Torrance, and I met. I was hired at the EOP office to be a peer advisor, and I was also working as a lab tech, and I was also working at an optometrist office. I was working technically full time and going to school full time for biology associate's degree. But either way, I was very happy to be in school. My dad, I was living at home, going to school. He didn't think much of it, so he allowed that. And so it was through the EOP office that I met a counselor who truly believed in me for the first time and said, nope, you can be whatever you want, and you can do it here in the U.S., which to me was unheard of. None of my cousins, none of my family members had achieved any of that. So I was breaking ground, and it was scary, but at the same time, it was very exciting because I was being pushed to do things that I never would have done on my own. From going to conferences, going to pre-med conferences when I wasn't even a pre-med yet.
Tell that story. That's a great story.
Yeah. So my counselor decided, because she knew that I really liked medicine, she enrolled me in a public health conference at UCLA. And when I went there, I thought it was for pre-med students or students interested in medicine. When I got there, as the conference was going on, I realized that almost everybody in the room was either a doctor or a resident in medicine already. And lucky for me, I sat next to the director of the medical school at Martin Luther King UCLA chapter. It was incredible. He turned to me at one point and said, "So, what year are you in? Because you look really young." And I said, "No, I don't know what you mean by that because I'm not even in med school." And so he was really surprised that I would be even interested or understand what was being said. And I actually did understand it. And I thought it was an amazing conference. It was on public health. It was on outreach programs. And it was just an amazing conference. And I was in La La Land. I was happy. And I was
just
thrilled.
A shout out to that counselor, right? So counselors, if any of you guys are watching, just to know how impactful one little act of kindness or just that push, right? And the exposure you had at that moment to solidify.
And actually later on, I came back after I had already graduated and gone on to UC Irvine to do my bachelor's degree. They brought me back a couple times to talk to the first year incoming high school students and things like that, to motivate them to do things outside the box and just try things that they would have never even thought of. And because it made a world of a difference for me, it solidified the idea of me going to med school and graduating with a medical degree, which again, unheard of because nobody in my family had ever talked about it or done it, at least not a female. Later on, I had another cousin who was about my age who did go to medical school in Mexico, and he's currently a trauma orthopedic surgeon, amazing surgeon. But him and I would always compete with each other.
Nothing like a friendly competition.
I think if I would have stayed in Mexico, I probably would have been an orthopedic trauma surgeon just to be competitive for him. But no.
Cousin, if you're watching, thank you.
I know. Jose Luis, Anyway, so I'm so proud of the people who, and actually honored to have had them in my life, because I think that if it wasn't due to them, I don't think I would be here. I really don't. I think that my path was I had already made up my mind that I was going to study biochemistry, and that was it. I wasn't looking into medicine as a field anymore, but it gave me the opportunity to actually believe in that and know that that was an actual opportunity for me. Now, I knew that the path was going to be hard and long and costly. I never knew how long, how costly, but I knew it was costly. And still, years after, I still owe tons of money. But I don't want to discourage people if this is a field that you feel that you're called for, because it truly is a calling. You cannot. I really do believe that the good doctors out there are called to be doctors.
Wow.
The people who are in medicine who are only for the money they're not good doctors. They don't have people skills. They don't know how to touch a human and actually mean. The true doctors out there, the people who have heart are truly called to be doctors. And it takes a lot of effort, energy, knowledge, spirit, and a lot of gumption, as I was saying before, to actually go through this career. But it's so worth it.
Talk about you going to college, you having to work full time, going to med school, and also let's talk about the social aspect of this, especially being a Latina. You not getting married into like your 30s, I think you said, late 20s, 30.
Yeah.
That in itself is like,
well, I mean,
a revelation.
One of the things I tell my daughter, who I actually had when I was a third-year medical student, is that you make choices of how you live your life. And one of the things I made a choice of early on was that I had to postpone dating and going out and really having a personal life in order to pursue my career. And I knew that came with consequences, like either marrying later, maybe even not marrying at all. And at some point,
okay with that?
And I was okay with that at some point. I think it happened after I lost my dad. It really hit me hard for some reason. And I think one way of coping was I actually had to take time off med school during that time because I was very depressed, and I had gone through so much my first 2 years of med school that I actually thought of leaving school at that point. And I was a teacher prior to that, and so I decided to go back to teaching. And so I became a pre-K teacher, of all things, not just a teacher, pre-K teacher.
I'd be fired as a teacher.
It was their love and their honesty and their energy that healed me, and
really,
that helped, yeah.
I think they would traumatize me. I think they would fire me as a teacher.
There were days that I thought to myself, "Oh my God, what did I do to myself?"
Absolutely,
but because it was. They called me Miss Garcia, Miss Garcia, Miss Garcia, Miss Garcia, Miss Garcia. Oh no, Miss Judith, Miss Judith, Miss Judith. And it was like love and hate at the same time.
Absolutely.
And then teaching them, well, you had to teach them how to potty train them and how to sleep with them. So it was definitely learning the ropes of how to be a parent. And I think that it opened my eyes to the idea that I actually wanted to be a parent. And at that time in my life, I didn't have a lot of exposure to qualified men, and so the reality of life.
That's a whole other chapter that we'll get into later. But
I did end up meeting my husband, and he became a very important part of my life and my journey in medicine. He also believed in me like nobody else had, and he did things for me that I didn't know that I needed until he came along. And so I think that having him compliment me that way really made a difference. And although he was younger than me, he made a difference, and we both agreed to continue the idea of having a family, and he was okay with that.
And you pursuing medicine
and
at the same time, right?
And me continue to pursue medicine,
so
yeah.
That was like, okay, that's nice.
Anyway, fast forward, it's changed, but I think that in that moment, I know, I truly, truly believe that God puts people in your path to learn something about yourself and about your life. Either it's a learned experience or a lesson to be learned. And I think he was kind of both things. He was a learned experience, and he definitely made a difference in the way I saw myself in medicine, and allowed me to be a mom, which to me is one of the greatest gifts. And I tell my daughter that even despite his support and everything, it wasn't until I had her that cemented the reason why I wanted to be a doctor.
Really?
And it was, yes, because I knew why I was fighting. I knew who I was fighting for. And it made everything made sense at that time. I knew that because until then I wanted to be a doctor. For me, it was a little bit, to some degree, you fulfill an ego type of trip, because you're thinking, oh, it's me, and then when you're given somebody who depends on you, and all of a sudden you have to shift your values to be like, okay, wait, why am I actually working so goddamn hard? Well, it was her. Well, not my husband, not anybody else. Her.
It's funny. I always say that I learned to be treated. I learned how I wanted to be treated until I had my daughter.
Yeah.
I did not know what it meant to, or I did not know what I wanted until I realized what I wanted for her. And then somebody very wisely told me, if you want it for her, you have to have it first.
First, yeah.
And then you treat it. And so for me, having Giselle was like, oh, I want to be treated a certain way, and this is not the way I want. The situation I was in was not the situation where I wanted to be treated as. And I didn't have the strength or the will until I had her. Maybe, and the wisdom until I had her. Yeah. And once I had her, it just, I said, oh, okay. Yeah. And somebody told me, you want it for her? You have to have it.
Yeah, no, because at that point, sleepless nights and illnesses and things like that became a reality of my everyday life. And I knew that the only reason I was allowing other people to maybe mistreat me or because in medicine, this is one of the learning curves you have to go through is tolerating mistreatment from your superiors.
Abuse.
Yes, abuse.
Abuse.
Because
she's kind.
They have power over you.
That's right.
Their word is bigger than yours, and they can snap their fingers and you're done. And so, and that going in, so you always have to be prepared mentally that you're already behind the curve somehow. And so you have to work. And as a Latina, as a woman,
to say that
you're behind the curve 10 times more.
Yeah, you're behind the curve from the beginning. And it's
from
probably
the start gate. Yeah.
Insane to catch up or even to be considered at that level. Yeah. Talk to us about, because you and I have talked about this, about how you have suffered with imposter syndrome and how you have suffered that you didn't belong, even though we all know that you have belonged. And this is for all my Latinas or girls in general, just any woman that wants to go into the field or feels that you can't do it, and how we all suffer from this at one point or the other. But tell me, in med school and in your profession now as a doctor of almost 20 years, short of 2 months, when have you suffered from imposter syndrome, and how do you overcome that? Because to this day, I sometimes still deal with that.
Yeah, no, I think it's a constant battle. But I don't think it became very real to me until I was actually in practice. I got hired by a group of doctors. At that point, the group in and of itself was not very big. I think it was only about 20 or 25 physicians. Half of them were family medicine or primary care doctors, and the other were specialists. And so I came in, and their idea for me was that I was going to open a new clinic, and they were going to place me in the new clinic as their new face for the group and market me that way. But they gave me zero support. Nothing. No support in the clinic, no support for the development. It was me and one assistant, and that was it. No information, no training. It was actually really, 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 looking back at it, it was wrong. What they did was wrong. But long
you don't
story
know
short,
what you don't know.
No, I didn't know. And so for me, I was, in my head, I wanted to give myself the honor of saying, oh, I'm going to open a new clinic for them, and I'm going to be the face of the new doctors and blah, 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 blah. And so I put myself as a spearhead for this, and I wanted to, and I did. I grew that clinic rapidly. It became very prosperous. In 6 months, we were busy. We were very, very busy, so much so that they had to bring in a PA to help me out one or two times a week, and they had to move in another assistant to help with the back office. But the support was still very negligent and very poor. And it was until then that it hit me. I became, even though they wanted me to be their spearhead and the face of the group, I was nobody to them, and I felt it, and they made me feel that way, and so I took it on as I was just a link or a peg in the wheel. It was nothing else. I was nobody, and anytime they wanted, they could take everything I had worked so hard for, and so it didn't matter how many titles I had or how many accolades I had, how many awards I had won. It didn't matter. At the end of the day, if that clinic failed, it was all on my shoulders, and I was nobody. And
how do you bounce back from that? And I'm assuming this is something that you went through, and this is something that happened mid-career, early career.
Yeah, early career.
Yeah. That's what I can.
I
take
was
from
about 3 years out of residency.
Yeah. So this is something that, like, your new experience, right? You're already out there, and you have these hopes and dreams. You've achieved so much, and then, like you said, somebody can take it away from you.
And it was confusing because you could get all the love and care or the feedback from the patients. You could tell that they really liked me. The clinic had been growing. Word of mouth had been spreading. People liked who I was as a physician. I didn't like who I was as a physician. It didn't match with my values. It didn't match with what I wanted. I didn't feel supported. I was working way too many hours for the pay that I was getting, and I felt used. And on top of it, I felt that it didn't match who I was. So if that imposter syndrome came in, because it's like, who am I really? I don't feel like I'm being treated as a doctor. And compared to the other physicians in the group, I wasn't being treated equally. And so unfortunately, it ended up eroding my persona, my confidence, and a lot of things. And I ended up having an event where they thought it was a stroke, but looking back, I think it was just from the stress of it all. And I actually had to take almost 15 months off work, which was horrible because it backtracked my income, my career, and unfortunately it settled me as in their eyes. Not only was I failed at the clinic, although the clinic continued to do well, and then when I left, the clinic failed itself, not me, not when I was there. But long story short, in their eyes, all of a sudden, I wasn't the competitive doctor they had hired, and it was very damning.
Let me ask you that. You just said something, the competitive doctor that they had hired. Mm-hmm. So as everybody knows, we're from Latino heritage, Latino origins, and you and I have talked about what medicine is in Latin America and how it's revered and respected, and doctors, what they say goes. And here in the U.S., we have something we tend to doubt doctors, right? Because it's more of the system, right? We know that there's a system in place that either wants to keep us sick or just doesn't have the time or the capacity to see everybody effectively, right? So, and you just said it, competitive doctor. Like, to me, the fact that there's competitive and doctor in the same phrase, what are we competing? Are we competing for income? Are we competing for accolades? Are we competing for more revenue? That is, and I want you to speak on one, that what does that do to you as a doctor, right? On your ethic and your belief system, and then two, you're a unicorn in the sense that you really want to help your community. You really are here for medicine. And I'll tell you how I know that for a fact later on. But what does it do? How do you practice in this environment?
Well, it really has made it much, much, much more difficult. And I think that for myself, I think I've been honing in to relate to other doctors who, like me, have the same values and have the same mentality and can support each other. But it really is very difficult. What I meant by competitive doctor is that they make you feel like you're competing with other doctors in the same field, especially doctors that don't hold the same values that you do. And in some cases, they're all about the money, right? So again, like I mentioned before, for some of us, it's a calling. It really is something that we do because we love treating patients, healing, all that good stuff. And to some others, it is more about revenue. And they look at seeing patients as how many numbers can I see, because the more I see, the more I get. And when you're being looked at in that framework, you're being seen as, can this person provide compete with other doctors who are doing the same amount of patient care or better, and seeing more and more patients, and how can we push her to be more productive. In their eyes, productivity means seeing more and more patients. Now, we all know that in the U.S., there is a shortage of doctors, and that's not even funny. That's really, really short. And there's more people leaving medicine now than ever before. Why? Because there isn't guarantees in the longevity of our profession, particularly right now with all the politics behind it.
Right.
And so, yes, it has become much, much harder to practice medicine, to be believed in medicine. Half of the time, I'm being challenged to provide information of basic science, of basic things, and people still will not believe what I'm saying, even though I have proof, even though I have evidence, even though I can vouch, like all my accolades or education.
I think that, like, one, there's a lot of misinformation and the mistrust
Right.
of the profession,
Right.
the mistrust of the establishment as well,
Right.
because
No.
I'm lucky to have Dr. Garcia on my side, so I can call her for anything and bounce things off of her. Not everybody has that, right? But I know that there's we have clients that'll come in here and be like,
Right.
oh, the doctor said this, but I don't believe them, and then they'll pull out the Chat GPT, or
Right.
they'll pull out
And so one of the biggest misinformations, for example, is that pharma pays doctors. And that's, I had mentioned that before. Pharma does not pay doctors. Good doctors do not get paid by pharma, period. And if you want to, there's actually a website that you can look up where you can see how much money a doctor has received from pharma. The majority of us who don't get any money from pharma, the only money that you'll ever see is from food, because we were invited to a conference that the pharmaceutical company provided the lunch, and we have to sign that we received the lunch. Other than that, I don't get a penny from prescriptions, and the 99.9% of my prescriptions that I ever prescribe are generic, meaning they have no pharma backing them up. So I don't know if that makes sense to many of you, but the reality is that we do not combine the way we practice. It's actually a law against that. It's called the anti-kickback law, where I cannot be associated with a pharmaceutical company, with a surgical center, with even a med spa, for example. If I'm promoting it and getting money from it, to some degree, it's a kickback, unless I'm actually in that practice or in that part of it. So for example, if my practice was elsewhere and I was referring people to Olivia's, that would be anti-kickback, because if I got any money from here, it would be illegal. So just for you guys to understand how much sacred we hold most of these things, and we were drilled in our head, no, you cannot do that. You can't. You can go to jail even. So for us to have our values questioned sometimes, like, oh no, you must get so much money off in pharma. I get the question all the time.
Well, and I think there's a lot. The media has a lot to do with it, and just the misinformation, the mistrust, and which saddens me, because I know her personally, and it saddens me that's happened to the profession. And like she says, 99.9 doctors are good and for the calling,
right?
And they they want to do good. You know, the reason I know Dr. Garcia is a good doctor, that I knew we had partnered up with the right person when this happened. When we were forming our business, our corporation, and all this, I said to Dr. Garcia, I go, we got to do infusions. You know, I go, many of our clients are asking for infusions. And she said, no. And I said, why not? And she says, they don't work. And I said, what do you mean they don't work? She said, it's mostly a placebo effect. And she said, and it's a very expensive pee. And I said, wait. I said, but this, you know, a lot of people like them. And she said, yeah. She's like, because it's a placebo effect, but like the banana bag, the vitamin C, she said, unless you're extremely hungover or other factors, but your average healthy person, she's like, it's a waste of money. And she said to me, if we have a client that is able to spend $200, $150 to $200 for these services, let's offer something that's really beneficial to them. And that is when I knew we had the right person, right? And because trust, we would make a ton of money if we offered the infusions. But she's against it because she said, I'm not going to recommend or do anything that's not beneficial to our clients.
And at the end of the day, you know, the way I practice medicine is called evidence-based medicine. So I want to believe that I do my own research and my own studying, and I'm constantly reading and studying on new research that comes out in order to stay apart with the innovations and things like that. Why would I give clients or patients something that I know for a fact doesn't show evidence of functioning when they can actually do something that is actually going to make them feel better, that's going to have long-term benefits, and that we can guide them to have a more healthy life and livelihood. And I think that that's the point of me as a doctor. And I'll repeat it again. My primary goal as a doctor is to educate patients so that they can have the tools to make better choices for their life. At the end of the day, if you have the tools, if you have the knowledge, you make better choices.
That's right.
Period.
Yeah. Now we're going to talk about the GLP-1. I just learned something new that Dr. Garcia has been prescribing GLP-1 for like 17 years. So she's going to tell you a little bit about the history. But what I really want to talk about here, because we see it on a daily, of how people think GLP-1 is the be all, end all, and that you only need to take this and this will solve all your problems. That's not the case, doctor, right?
No.
It is much bigger than just an injection. So talk to us about the GLP-1s.
So GLP-1s, or glucagon-like peptides, are exactly that. They're a peptide or a protein form that our body makes naturally. It is a response to satiety or fullness in our intestines, in our stomach. It is mostly made in the small intestine, but it's also made in the pancreas. And glucagon in and of itself is made in the pancreas. Glucagon-like peptide is made in the intestine. And what it does is that when you're finished eating or when you've had enough, there's a stretch mechanism in our intestines that sends this chemical to the brain saying, hey, we're done, stop eating. Most of us can override that. And
we can.
We'll hold off for a little bit, let the stomach or the contents of the intestine drain a little so that we can continue eating. And that is where the problem lies. And I think that this medicine was created in hopes to outsmart the insulin drive, because when there's a lot of insulin in our body, we become insulin resistant, which leads to diabetes type 2. And this is the number one plague in our country is diabetes type 2. So in order to treat it, we developed, science developed this peptide hoping to curb the way that our body is using insulin and how we even eat. Now, this medication or peptide has been in the market for possibly over 20 years. I've been prescribing Ozempic-like medicine for at least 17 years. It wasn't very popular because it was very expensive, and insurance companies, like always, hold the biggest bucket of saying no to everything. Still do. Yeah. And so it has become more popular. And at a certain point, they realized that patients in studies, and while people were in study groups, they realized, hey, they're losing over 16% of their body weight while on these GLP-1 medications. Why? Because their consumption, their calorie intake has gone down significantly because they're not hungry anymore. The medicine makes them not be hungry. And guess what? It worked. It worked. And so then when it came off label and it became generic, like semaglutide, tirzepatide, linaclotide, all these generic forms of the Trulicity, Ozempic, Wegovy, et cetera, then the market hit for, boom, it bounced for weight loss. So, and many companies like Weight Loss MD and what was the other? There's a bunch of other companies that started using it as a weight loss tool, which is exactly what we can use it as, especially here at Olivia's. We can treat you for diabetes, but truthfully, we want to continue using the GLP-1s as a weight loss tool. Now,
but speak to that. It's not just it, right?
No, not at all.
No.
And
also, I love when you were saying in Spanish about the muscle, the bone
Right.
density, the muscle density,
Right.
and I think our clients need to really hear how important
Right.
it is to change lifestyle, because there is
Right.
adverse reactions to this.
So GLP-1s are a great, and I'm going to say it over and over, tool. It's a tool that you can use to help you lose weight. Now, with that weight loss, if you're only using GLP-1s as your main source, of course you're going to lose weight. Why? Because you're not hungry, you're eating less, so you're in a calorie deficit. But with that, not only is some fat loss, you're also going to lose muscle and you're going to lose bone mass. In general, your BMI will decrease, which is good, but not good enough, because it could actually, long-term wise, it can have backfire effects, which means if you lost a lot of muscle mass, if you lost a lot of bone mass, guess what? You're at higher incidence of bone fractures and falls, balance issues, and things like that. And although GLP-1s have been proven to improve cardiovascular effects and mental and memory issues, there's still, long-term wise, I think that if you only use them as a weight loss tool, you're not going to get it if you're not using a healthy, higher protein intake and exercise along with it. And they have to be hand in hand, or else the benefits of the GLP-1 are going to really start to dilute and not work at the long term. And then if you stop it too soon, the rebound weight gain can still occur if you never learned how to eat properly. Because the whole idea of using it as a tool is for you to learn how to portion size smaller, how to really control diet, caloric intake more than anything. So you're using this ability to not feel so hungry to learn how to start counting your calories and doing all that. Yes, weight loss is hard. Weight loss is a job.
Especially in perimenopause.
Especially in perimenopause. But if you're not doing it correctly and you stop using your GLP-1s, guess what? You're going to gain the weight again. Because if you were only eating a little bit of carbs here and a little bit of this here, when that hunger comes back, it's going to come back. And it's going to come back with a vengeance.
Yes.
And so, and the weight gain is going to be bigger. And the inflammation part of it can also be a trigger for cardiovascular disease again, and for all the things that you were working against. So it really, really is imperative for the person that's going to embark in a weight loss program using GLP-1s or using really any of the other medications for weight loss, that they understand that it is literally just a form of a tool in order for them to give them space to learn how to eat healthier and exercise. And those two have to be hand in hand, or else the journey is not complete.
And I want you to speak on two things that we're seeing a lot of. We see a lot of patients, a lot of clients be like, up my dosage, because I'm not losing weight, and they have no patience. And when they actually have more body fat than muscle mass, when they have more body fat, they lose weight, the scale slower, because we're losing more visceral fat. And then the second is if your body's recompositioning, meaning you're losing sizes, your clothes fits you better, that is the goal, right? Am I wrong about that? Or about that.
Yes and no. So it depends on what the whole idea you want into the weight loss program in the first place. And I think that this is where we can be very, very beneficial to the patient in making them understand that any weight loss program, the goal is not just to reduce sizes of your pant, which is great. Yes, the waist circumference is super important. But the reality is that the inner workings of the body, so that inflammation, that insulin drive, that all those things that are driving that appetite and everything, that food noise, that's what we want to control. That's what we want to learn how to use these medicines for, because at the end of the day, again, if I don't train you how to eat healthy and how to make those better choices and how to really think about what you're putting in your mouth, then your weight loss journey is lost.
Yes,
right.
I agree with that.
And I think that that's a really, really important key in getting patients to understand not only how fast they're going to be losing weight, but also what it means when they recomposition. For example, the weight loss in their face and their skin, and how they're going to look different. Not just the vitality that they can gain, and how they can preserve that even if they come off the medicine, which is hopefully the goal, especially if they become, or if they get into a weight range that is more doable to continue the goal. The goal should always be to get into a weight range that is healthy for them. And then for some individuals, it still may be in an overweight category. They may not make it to a BMI of like 20 or 25. They may make it to a BMI of 28, and that's perfect. For them, that may be healthy enough to feel confident, to feel good, and to be internally healthy. Their lipids are better, their inflammatory markers are better, their overall cardiovascular risk has gone down, which is ultimately what they should be looking at, not the size of their pants or not how they look in the mirror. Yes, those are beautiful things, and those are things that we all want, but I think that really what should shine is what they've actually gained, which is all those other components of it. And I think that that's an important driver to our patients, to remind them every single time we see them when they come for their injections, or even if they're getting it on the outside and they come for other therapies, to remind them, hey, if you are on a GLP-1, don't forget that your goal is not just to lose the weight, but it's also to understand how your body is changing and how you can make it better long
metabolic
term.
health,
long-term wise. And then that's regenerative medicine.
And that's our next episode. What I want you to talk about, doctor, is about how we are getting into regenerative medicine and how regenerative medicine is important. Talk about a little bit about the history, the things that we should be coming up out of Olivia's heritage, but also how important it is.
Well, regenerative medicine is, and the concept is using either our own cells to regenerate tissue or plasma or anything that is within our body. But it comes from the idea of stem cells and stem cell research, where they were using a lot of it to help patients recover from cancer therapies and from, immune deficiencies and things like that, which is still being studied and used. And I think that it gave way for it to be used in other ways, including aesthetics and things like that. And so one of the ways that we can use it here is with the plasma injection. But in general, it also can be used in joint infusions, like even with hyaluronic acid and plasma and things like that. It's been used in a lot of other countries, including Europe. Here in the U.S., it's had more stigma, and there's a lot of kickback from it because there's a lot of people who believe that using stem cells is against life somehow. I don't know. But anyway, long story short, regenerative medicine just means that. It's using our own bodies and our own tissues kind of to regenerate our vitality, our usefulness, our ability to move and continue to be productive human beings until the end of our days. And I think I tell patients, one of my biggest things is that I don't give therapy to necessarily delete the idea that we're not going to die. No, we are going to die, and at the end of the day, but I want to make your life from here to whenever as the best quality that you have as possible. And that is through prevention as much as possible, preventing disease, preventing you getting sick so that you don't have to suffer until the day you die. Right. Also, being it's the therapies that we give are usually to make the body internally work to its optimal pace or to its optimal use until we can't.
Right.
Because and that's what truthfully regenerative medicine is.
And I also want to talk about a little bit more on the aesthetics, especially of how all these therapies can be used, but how important it is to also look good, especially with the Latino community.
Right.
We Latinas, we're supposed to look good, sexy, hot, but it shouldn't cost us anything.
Right.
It shouldn't be an investment. We're like Beyonce says, I woke up like this, which is not true.
No, exactly.
Right? So
no.
Like culturally, we're people that love beauty, love aesthetic, but somehow we're not supposed to invest or spend.
Yeah.
And I want you to talk about the research on how it's when we look better, we feel better, we work better, we do all of it, and how it's really an investment on us.
Yeah.
And how all these things are ultimately to have a higher quality of life and a better quality of life.
No, and I think it's such a true idea that we need to promote in women, but in general, especially in our community. I think that we are brought up to give of ourselves until we have nothing else to give. But when do we replenish ourselves? And if we replenish ourselves, why do we feel guilty about it? Why do I feel guilty of taking 2 hours to go get a facial and a massage? It shouldn't be that way. It should be that the people in our lives who love us are happy to see us productive and beautiful and all these things, that whatever makes us grounded, if it is a haircut, a hair dye, a facial, whatever those things may be, everybody has their own prerogative of what the concept of beauty is, and that's up to everybody. But we can give them these tools so that they can continue investing in themselves, because if you invest in yourself, you're investing in your family, you're investing in community, you're investing in society, because you become a better, more pleasant person, really.
No,
it's true. I think that we don't give it credit.
Right.
I think that
we're supposed to wake up like this. We're supposed to wake up every morning and look like this,
if
right?
If we had 20 attendants doing it for us before we even get up, yes.
Yeah, no, and one thing I think that I love about our community is that I always say is like, we not invented, but we like, in Spanish, we say remedios caseros, home remedies. My mom's been putting egg white on her face for a long time. We're, plant-based. We invented plant-based either through poverty, indigenous roots, whatever you might want to call it. But like there was a point in time where we took care of ourselves. We take care of ourselves. And when we say take care of yourselves, invest yourself, if it's not a facial or a treatment, it's something at home that you're doing at home, distilling your own roses or making your own masks, because at the end of the day, that's what's important. And, especially ethnically, like ruda or turmeric or roses is such part of like our culture, but somehow we get away from it. We get too busy.
It gets washed out. And unfortunately, we live in a society where we are told that anything that we make on our own is not good quality enough, and that it has to be either bought in a big jar that somehow makes it better. I don't know, but it's true. And I think that one of the things that I was telling you, I follow a good friend of mine who was a colleague in med school, and she practices out of Florida. But she practices regular medicine, but also has a med spa called Synergy. And she does Ayurvedic medicine. And one of her main pushes is natural organic components and everything. And
And
she posts every day. She
Yeah.
has a little video about something she takes on her by herself. And if you see her, she's only maybe 2 or 3 years younger than me, and she looks like she's in her 20s.
Yeah, I can
And
prove.
it's incredible. She doesn't, and she doesn't believe in neurotoxins, or
Yeah.
she does a lot of like facial massages and stuff like
washages,
that. And her hair, my God, just I tell her I envy your hair. That's all.
No, and
her hair is
I always tell people
her braids like still
yeah,
like this.
I always tell people I can prove to you and show you how plant-based is not benign. A lot of people think, oh, plants are benign, and I can tell you, no, you can really hurt yourself with certain plants.
And I think that,
but they're powerful, they're natural, but I think part of our society is that we like instant gratification and we don't like to put the work because as your friend, she works on her skin. She massages her skin. She takes the time.
She does yoga every day. I mean, so it's about consistency, and it's about investing in yourself, and it's about learning to love the parts of us that we did not get taught to love. I think that that's really hard, especially for us Latinas. But I think that it's an important message. Women,
yeah,
in
because
general.
we're held to
but I think
other societies.
But I think that it's an important message that, especially in places like this, where holistic health is being promoted, that's the basis of how we want our community to start growing and to start looking at medicine, not through the eyes of like Maha or any of those, ludicrous things, but in true science, true
evidence. It's
and
evidence-based.
at the end of the day, we will make our community healthier
and stronger.
And I think that if we teach, even starting from our own families, like one of the things I try to teach my kids is that infrequent eating causes insulin spikes, and that unfortunately can, even if they're thin, can lead to pre-diabetes and all that. And so I go, even if you're eating somewhat healthy, but if you're eating at different odds and then kind of spiking it through the day with little munchies here and there, I go, it's not good for you.
I've been insulin resistant since I was 18 years old and had no idea. PCOS, all that. And I was 110 pounds, right? And people would visually see me and say, you're healthy. And I can prove to you, I'm probably healthier now with 40 pounds overweight than I was at 110 and 115, right? But I fell into the social standard of being thin.
And so I think that the misconceptions like this is how we start, and it starts at home. It starts with our community. It starts with our close ones.
Right.
And helping them understand about good choices, and is it going to be perfect? No, of course not. And I think we all can make, bad decisions here and there. As long as we're consistent with the good ones, I think it overrides the majority of the bad ones. So I think that that's the key. So.
Well, this is our episode 3. As always, it goes by so quick with you.
Thank you.
But it's not our last with Dr. Garcia. So we are going to talk about women's health. We're going to talk about this perimenopause, because I want to beat that bitch's ass because I'm sick of her. She is wrecking my life. So, and I'm sure she's not only wrecking my life, she's probably wrecking many of our audience lives. So we're going to actually talk about that. But one thing I want to ask you is to please leave comments, questions. If you have any questions for Dr. Garcia or any comments of subjects that you want us to touch upon, please do so. Like always, I love our Dr. Garcia. She is a unicorn in this industry. She is bilingual, Spanish, perfect English. Only less than 2% of our medical doctors in the United States speak Spanish. And by the way, we're 30% of the population. So that's a wake-up call to any little girl that's watching us, any little boy that's watching us, that you want to enter this profession. Know that Dr. Garcia is here to guide you, support you, any way possible. But again, super proud and blessed to be with you and work with you, Dr. Garcia. So take it away. Sarah, goodbye.
If you really are interested in medicine and you really have that calling in your heart, don't ever give up. It's hard, yes. And
you heard her story.
Be ready to want to work, because it's a long journey of learning, and it's a good one. And I really believe that we need more of you in the ranks, and I hope you do decide to do it. And if you need any help or mentorship, you can always look me up. I'm more than happy to guide you, or especially if you'll see me around here, you can always come and shadow me. So anyway, good luck to everybody, and thank you so much for having me today.
And then for all my people out there, you belong in those rooms, and don't ever forget that.
Yeah.
But thank you guys for watching. Stay tuned. Again, leave any comments.
Bye.